Did you know that kinky wellness is integral to your self-development? Hi, welcome to the Partition, home of kinky wellness, the ultimate destination to explore the integral connection between kinky wellness and your personal development. I'm your host and kinky wellness coach, Dana Shergill, and each Monday I bring on a special guest to dive into specific aspects of kinky wellness. From unconventional practices to thought-provoking conversations, I'm here to break down barriers and redefine the boundaries of wellness and pleasure. Don't forget to join me for my solo shows on Wednesdays, where I explore even further into the multifaceted layers of kinky wellness. So let's strip away the shame and taboo together and have an open conversation about it. Hey, and welcome back. In this episode, we welcome back Reiki healer and intimacy coach, Shelby Avann. Shelby was previously on the podcast in episode 147, Attachment Styles. But for today, she is going to give us an introduction to Reiki and the transformative potential energy healing can have. So let's not wait any longer and welcome back Shelby to the show. Welcome back to the show, Shelby. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, on this episode, we're going to be talking all about Reiki. Now, to tell you the truth, this is a fairly new topic for me, but I'm hella interested in it because it's all about energy work from my understanding. So, I'll let you lead with what is Reiki?
So yeah, it's energy healing. It's a modality where like I've been attuned as a practitioner. So there's 3 levels of Reiki healing. So there's level 1, 2, and then masters. So I've got my master's level. And then when we're doing the healing, it works through each chakra in the person's system. So there's 7 chakras in the body, and each one represents something different. And depending on what's going on in people's lives, usually it's emotional things and stuff that they're not addressing, that gets stuck in their energetic system. And the Reiki helps to move some of that energy out and through to unstick the blockages. And then I also get messages along the way, which helps people understand like why the blockages are there in the first place and what they need to do moving forward in order to keep their body and their energetic system moving, like flowing well.
Okay, cool. So, you mentioned that there's 3 levels. I actually have 2 questions. So, you mentioned that
Okay.
there's 3 levels. If you could go into what those 3 levels are. So, a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. So when we're doing training, the first level of Reiki is it's learning how to do self healing, basically. So you get an attunement, and what the attunements are like, we have this energetic channel within us, and then each time we get an attunement, we open up that channel more and more. So if you think of what our the original size before any attunements happen is like the size of a straw, and then as we get our level 1 attunement, that straw becomes like a pipe, and then like a bigger construction pipe, and then a sewer grate or something like that. As we level up and attune more and more to allow the channel to open up further. So level 1 is that self-healing, because it's very important to understand how that energy healing works on ourselves first, and to see where our blockages are and what it is that we need to heal before or while working with other people, but understanding what it is that we need to do first. And then level 2 is where, again, channel opens up more and you're able to take on clients and help with healing for others. And level 3 is the masters, then you can train other people to also do Reiki work.
Okay, wonderful. Now, you mentioned that you receive messages when you're doing the work. Now,
Mhm.
what does that messages from the client that you're working with, or you kind of an intuition about what you're doing?
Yeah, it's they're basically kind of like psychic messages or messages from the client's body. Sometimes they're just different types of intuitive hits that come to me. It really depends, and it's very interesting, and it's different for each practitioner, because different people have their clairs. So there's a whole bunch of different types of clairs, but basically they go along with our senses. So some people are more clairaudient, which is like they might hear messages. Clairvoyant is seeing things, so they might see certain pictures or actually use something in the room as a visual stimulation. That's like why do I keep staring at this particular picture, and what's it mean for me, or is this representative of something to the client? there can be this inner knowing that comes up. Sometimes people get messages from smells or from tastes, actual feelings in the body. It can be very different depending on who the Reiki master or Reiki healer is.
Wonderful. So, in your particular case, did you have these messages or these feelings before you got into this work, or did you develop it as you went along?
Um, I, I think I was intuitive, but I didn't have the relationship that I now have with my intuition since I went on the journey to do my Reiki levels. So when I started doing that, yeah, I really started to trust my intuition a lot more because I would work on clients and just get them to confirm with me if the stuff made sense, or people's expressions would tell me that I was right because they were like, yeah, you don't know me. How did you know how did you know this thing? Or this is like something that like my dad would say, or something like that. It was just kind of wild. So there's a lot of confirmation. There's confirmation that happens every time that I do a session. So I just check in with people and be like, is this right or not? Or because the thing is with like with the messages and stuff like that too, my intuition can say something, but the way the message is interpreted can be many different ways. So it can be literal, or it can also be something like maybe this reminds the client of something else and it leads them down a path that I don't need to know about. And it's kind of like meant to keep that part private from me so that like maybe it's not something that they're ready to be vulnerable with and share with me, or I just don't need to know. So it's really cool how the messages can come through and how those intuitive nudges can bring about the healing that the people need.
Wonderful. Well, a lot of this comes back to intuition. And would you
Mm.
mind defining that for us? And if there's like, if it gets, I guess, confused with other type of things like an ego, for instance?
Mm-hmm. So I feel like we may have talked about this the last time, but I don't remember. But ego versus intuition, I feel like if you also are doing nervous system work and like your own self-healing work, you're going to notice the difference between whether it's one or the other. I find the intuition is very quiet, calm, and comes from the body, from the soul. Like it comes up in a different way. And it feels very honest, true. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And then the ego is a lot more heady. And I think I've noticed when I get in some of my sessions, if I start to get too heady and more into my coaching brain versus my Reiki brain, and then I'm trying to like figure out an answer, I have to I start speaking a lot faster, and I have to actually take a moment to pause, take a breath. Usually I'll tell the client, I think I'm in my head, I'm just going to take a second here. And then it triggers me to be like, okay, let's get like drop down into intuition and ground ourselves a bit more and get out of the head and into the body so that we can actually give the proper messages, not coach these people. Because this at this point in time in a Reiki session, that's not what we're here for. We're looking for what the body, the soul is looking to channel through here.
Wonderful. So it when you go into a Reiki session with someone, that's is there conversations that happen before, or how would someone be able to prep to maximize their session with you?
To prep, like you don't really have to do anything to prepare. If it's just, if they have questions about what's going on, I think some of the things, depending on if people have researched it or not, one of the things to know is that like basically I can do it either virtually online, because when we're dealing with energy, it doesn't matter what the distance is. You can send healing and energy towards people at any place, anytime. So it can be done over Zoom like this, or it can be done in person. And then if we're doing an in-person session, then like it's on a table, you're fully clothed. I usually have blankets and sometimes I'll have crystals and stuff there. But yeah, they're like it's just basically get to chill and have a nap if you want to, and then you can talk to me or not. I don't want people to come if they're under the influence of anything though. So like no drugs, no alcohol, nothing like that.
It's interesting that they can take a nap during it, so they can really fall asleep while you're still doing your work with them.
Yeah, I have had some people fall asleep. It's just really relaxing. I don't think I've had any client come off the table and say that they weren't relaxed and feeling really peaceful at the end of the session, because it's the energy healing is very co-regulating. It's allowing people to actually chill and take some time for themselves. And so I think even just in like laying down and letting themselves decompress, that in itself is very peaceful for people that don't, for anyone really. I think if you're, used to running around and stuff.
From my understanding, when it comes in, there's not really a lot of communication happening while this is going down. Is that correct?
It depends on the practitioner. I talk a lot through mine, unless I'm intuitively getting, don't like stop talking and just let the session happen. But I really believe in the intuitive messages that come through. And I feel like it's important for people to really grab hold of their intuitive gifts and the messages that are coming through and sharing that with the people. Because I've had times where I'll get messages and I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, this is really personal. Am I actually sharing this with them? And I can't get that message out of my head until like nothing else will come through unless I speak it,
Mm.
basically. So it depends on the people, but I prefer and I like to see other practitioners that like allow their messages to come through because I think that they're trusting their voice and the messages that are coming through, and I feel like that they're more attuned and trusting of themselves, basically, which is what I want in people that I teach and train, and also people that are going to work on me, because I don't want like I don't want ego coming through. I don't want people to just be quiet and then hold back things that are meant for me.
Yeah, they're kind of, it sounds like it's more like a vessel. Like you're really just there to just whatever comes into your head to say it to them for their benefit. And they kind of take it or leave it or use what's relevant. But I guess if you're not sharing that information, then you are withholding something.
Yeah. And I think that there is this certain line that can kind of go with it too, because again, it's kind of going back to that ego versus intuitive gift. So there can be a lot of codependency that can happen within a healer client dynamic if people haven't done that work on themselves. So the healer can start saying some things which would be like, you need to do XYZ in order to better yourself, heal yourself, do like whatever it is, and say like, or sell them on something or whatever. If that's what they consistently do, that's not, to me, that's not like the intuitive voice coming through. There's sometimes where for me, I've had people on my table and I'm like, I feel like you actually would benefit from my coaching, and I'll let them know about it, but I'm not going to say you have to do this thing. But then
Mm-hmm.
other people, I'm kind of like, I don't feel like that's your bag right now. I don't feel like that's like where you're looking to go. This is just what you need right now. And that's fine. And so I don't need to sell them anything. But I think as a healer, it's important to tell people, like not to tell people what to do, but to lay things on the table and say, these might be some good options. But yeah, people still need to make their own choices. So it's not, if the healer feels like they have to tell them to do a certain thing, I feel like that's kind of more leading into that codependent relationship with the client, which is not what you want to do or have. That's not a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. Now, when
Mhm.
you're working with someone and they're in it and you're moving that energy around, what can someone expect in the sense of I've seen some videos where people might start shaking, some people
Mhm.
start crying. So is that expected in every session or is that just or like I'm not sure.
Every session can look very different, and it depends on who I'm working with. It depends where they are in their healing journey, what their body needs. And how comfortable they are with me. So I have a lot of people cry
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of vulnerable stuff that comes up. I get a lot of women and like women's issues kind of come up. A lot of stuff around like getting pregnant, reproduction, and some trauma stuff that just seems to be the clientele that happens to come to me. And so they usually cry. I've had one person shake, but that was actually one of my friends, and he was doing a lot of energy work himself. So I feel like when the shaking thing is not a common thing unless you're already in the on the journey of practicing somatic movement and energy work and getting trauma out of your body, because shaking is like trauma getting released out of your body, basically. And it might scare the shit out of people because it's like huh, what is happening right now? But it's the nervous system actually releasing and finally completing a cycle of like I was scared and I didn't feel safe and I couldn't shake it off. I couldn't run away. I couldn't do XYZ. And so I captured it in my body. I left it here. And now I'm feeling safe enough to actually allow it out. And so there might be shaking and crying or anything else too. Like sometimes people can, I don't know if I've had people laugh or not, but I know that different, like it can, those releases can come out in many different forms.
Absolutely. And even with the
Mhm.
shaking, to a point where like scare the shit out of somebody. I remember the first like real breakthrough I had with breath work, and
Mm.
I had a ton of shaking, and it was just like, and I could feel it and I felt lighter, but it was like my whole skin was just shaking, 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 shaking. And I felt
Mhm.
so good after. Uh,
Yeah, I've had some shaking too, but this is all, I don't think I've had any with Reiki, but I have actually this friend that I'm talking about. So he's done some energy work. Uh he's done some massage work, but he's also very in tune with energy. So he was doing like a massage on me, and then our energies just kind of blended. And then through the session, I ended up starting to shake and like releasing some stuff too, which was really cool. And then that was kind of the beginning of some of my stuff just releasing, because after that I would just start shaking on my own as I was doing some of my energy work, or breath often activates it actually for me.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about women going for reproductive issues. Is it a lot of people that are looking to get pregnant that are turning to Reiki for energy, or
No, it's usually like they've been like there's miscarriages, or there might be
hmm,
sexual traumas, or it can be like stuff like that. Or even I think I did actually have like a, I don't know if they were adult kids or not, but they'd had kids and they'd grown to a certain age and they'd lost them. So I've had different things like that come up.
so it's quite heavy too, like for
Mm.
Reiki. Now, do are there lighter things like people can go to you or do a session like this for almost like a regulation or kind of like a
Mhm.
maintenance checkup?
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't think people necessarily always come in thinking that that's what's going to happen in
Mhm.
the sessions. It's just about what like again, I do intimacy coaching, and I like to work with women, and this reproduction and like that whole area of life for me is something that's really important to me, and I know a good bit about. Um, on the trauma side, I want to get more informed with some of those things, but that is literally where my interest lies. And so I'm not surprised that that's the type of people that come to me, or they have those things behind it, but that's not necessarily what they are coming to me for. They're coming first, like something's up, something's bothering them. And and then that's just what comes through. But I have had people that have come to me, and like, that it could just be that they went, not just, but like they went through a breakup, or there's people that are sick. I guess these are all kind of heavy things, but most of the time people aren't really coming for Reiki if they're feeling good. There's something that's kind of off for them.
Energy work, it seems to be one of those things where people either believe it wholeheartedly or
Mhm.
they're very, very skeptical about it. So,
Yeah.
how would you address that with somebody who might be on the fence, or maybe they're unaware or they don't believe in it? What would you tell them or try to say to them to change their mind?
Mhm. I'd say it's okay to be skeptical. When I first tried it, I didn't know what to expect of it. And I was pretty skeptical about a lot of stuff too, until I actually did it, until I had a Reiki session done. And then even the stuff that, again, like when I was doing the healing, I was kind of not believing some of the stuff that was coming through. I was like, this is kind of insane. So skepticism is fine, but still having an openness to try, I think, is important. And if you really like believe that it's not going to work, it won't. It
Hmm.
just depends. But I feel like if you're kind of on the fence about it, then you're open enough to allow it to work and show you what it can do.
And how long do effects of Reiki last? Like, is it some of those things where they feel energetic right after they leave, or it's maybe tired afterwards?
They'll probably feel tired, but again, people leave and they've been laying down for like 45 minutes or an hour. They've moved a lot of energy through the body, so that in itself is relaxing, but can also be tiring. But then I think the emotional toll of it too. So depending what's kind of come up, that in itself can kind of be like, "Ooh, I need to like detox that out of my system too." So it varies, but I don't know how long I've had clients say that it's the effects have lasted, but I'd say maybe up to a week.
Okay, wonderful. And when you mean like moving energy, so you're using your hands above your client and is it close to the body or it's like kind of hovering above their body as you're moving it around?
It can be either or. I can put, sorry, either or in the sense of I can have my hands on the body or I can have my hands hovering in their aura over top of them. It depends on what they want. So I always ask my clients what they prefer. And then I let them know they can change their mind at any point in time, or I'll just listen to their body too. Because sometimes I feel sometimes people don't have, well, especially women don't always have that boundary thing. They don't feel safe or are scared to set boundaries or say like, hey, this isn't feeling good anymore. I don't like this. So I'll listen to the energy of the body. And if it's pushing me away, then I'll just take my hands off the body instead and move as far away as I feel I need to. Because I did have a client who, when I was doing one of the fairs, I had her sitting in a chair and I was working with her. I didn't really have a lot of space to move away from her. So I was working on her and then I got to one area on her and it was just like, it was really pushing me back. And I told her, I was like, this is what's happening. She's like, yeah, that sounds about right. I'm like, okay.
That's funny. So some people are kind of like aware, like, yeah, that seems like my energy right up that alley.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and honestly, a lot of the stuff that comes up in the sessions, I don't think people are really super surprised by the messages that are coming through. I'll be like, oh yeah, that is something I need to work on. But like again, that's the thing is that if you know you need to work on it and you're ignoring it, then it's just stuffing it back into your body where it's getting stuck. And so we need to address it to move it forward, out, and through the body to allow the energy to flow well.
So do you start at the top of the head and then work your way down through all the seven, like all the chakras, or is there a particular type of theme or I guess structure to it?
I usually start at the base chakras first. So the root chakra, which is at the hips, or the well, it can be any of the first three. So root is at the hips, sacral is by the belly button and over like the reproductive organs, and then solar plexus is just under the boobs and kind of like it connects with the stomach. So any of those three ones are more the like grounding base chakras. So I'll start there first to make sure that the client's grounded. I don't want to start higher up in the body necessarily because I don't want them to not be grounded and then kind of depending on how sensitive people are, they can dissociate
Hmm.
and kind of like fly off into space. I've never had that happen, but again, it's always because I start with the bottom first. But as I'm saying it too, like working downwards would be fine, but sometimes I still don't get through all the chakras. And the way that the energy works, when we're talking about like Kundalini energy and the energy rising through the body, it serpents and spirals up through the chakras. And so it starts from the bottom and then works its way up. So if you have any blockages lower down, it's not going to be able to grow higher and higher into your body. So we have to work on the bottom first in order for the energy to flow all the way up and through.
Absolutely. And because this focuses a lot on the seven chakras, are you able to go into each of them and kind of just explain what a little bit about each one is?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So first, all the chakras are basically the color of the rainbow is each one represents one of the colors. So it's root chakra is red. That's the one at the hips, hips down. So like that's your safety, like basic needs, safety. That can be home life, family, like that sense of belonging and money. So anything that relates to safety for you is in the root chakra. Sacral is again over the belly button and the reproductive organs. So this is like the energy that I really like to live in and play with. This is your sexuality. This is emotions and creativity. And that's orange. The solar plexus is under the boobs, basically. And that's the self-confidence, the power of will. It's a more masculine energy of the get it done and move forward type of action. And there's the heart, which is about giving and receiving love. So heart's green or pink. So throat is blue. It's your self-expression. And it's, are you setting the boundaries that you need to set? Are you speaking up for the things that you need to speak up about? Are you being heard the way that you need to be heard? The throat can also be related to like sacral as well. So that creativity and how you're expressing your body and your emotions. I feel like they can be very connected. But that's kind of what the throat's about. Then third eye is in between the eyebrows, and that's your intuition. So what can also be connected with the third eye are your eyes and your ears. So what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And yeah, so that's your intuitive voice. Like what messages are you getting and where are they coming through? And if you actually have some eyesight issues, it might be because there's something that you don't want to see. And so as
Oh,
you heal that, there's potential. I've been trying to work with this for a long time to see if I can get my eyes to get better.
yep, yep.
um, and I don't know if it's quite worked. So I like to believe this. I like to believe this is possible, but that's something that's believed for the third eye. And then the crown chakra is the top of the head, and that's your connection to spirit. So whatever that looks like, whether that's God, goddess, many types of deities, whatever it is, just your connection.
Wonderful. Well, so it's our sacral chakra that's connected to our sexuality. So how
Mhm.
does your work include the intimacy, and how do you work with that with people who are struggling with intimacy?
When we're talking about like the combination of the energy,
A
sacral.
combination of Reiki and then helping someone with their intimacy.
To me, working with sexuality and working with someone's energetic field is extremely intimate in general. Like it's very personal to allow someone to touch your energetic field, to allow them in and to see what's kind of going on there for you. And regarding like the healing side of sexuality, so again, some of this stuff as I'm doing healing work, like if I see those things coming through, or I'm getting certain messages around sex and sexuality, like it can be anything like, there was this, I'm seeing like this trauma, I'm seeing fear, a lack of safety. I might see or feel dysregulation or a heart beating fast or anxiety in the stomach, feeling there's like I was thinking of one client who every time that I work with her, there's something about like she doesn't like people looking at her back or like
Mm-hmm.
any portion of the back of her. And it's just like this unsafety feeling that I get. And so something like that might come up and be like, not feeling safe having someone, maybe someone was like leering at her from behind her and, and maybe like something bad happened, or it was just the unsafety of like being leered at and those feelings. So it's like being able to see what's coming up through the Reiki sessions and the messages, and then working on creating that intimacy with yourself to feel safer. What could I have done in these situations that now how can I control it? And this is kind of where like the coaching side comes into it too, is, if I'm feeling certain ways, what can I actually do about it? How can I meet my own needs? How can I meet my own safety? How can I start to speak up for my boundaries? What wounds have come from these events that I can start to turn over into a more positive light or into healing those wounds,
Mm-hmm.
if that all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to Reiki, what I found interesting is that it's from Japan. No, am
Mhm.
I getting that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I find that cool because I didn't know where it came from. So it was cool that it was coming from Japan. But is there
Mhm.
anything that you wish that people would know about Reiki?
Well, I think one of the important things is like I always say this, but I don't really feel like it's always heard or people seem to care, but it's not something that's like a religious thing at all. It's just energy. It's what's available in the world. It's just easily accessible. Because I think it can be seen as something bad, but it's not like it's not me wielding any type of power, I guess, in any type of negative way. It's just being a conduit for energy.
Well, our education on energy is lacking. And so when you
Hmm.
say things about energy, it almost sounds like we're talking about magic. And so
Hmm.
some people will be like, no, that can't be real. That can't be real.
Hmm. It kind of is, to be honest. Like that is what it feels like. Sometimes you start to experience that, and there's certain things where I'm like, I don't know.
I
I
believe
could
in
be
magic. I
swayed.
believe in energy and all that jazz, and I
Yeah.
think it's helpful. And that's the thing about it. So it's a lot of trust. Like you have to trust the process, you have to trust you
Hmm.
and yourself, and kind of just be allowing that whatever is happening, even though I think so when it comes to certain health treatments, we're so like, oh, I have to see results right away. I need a
Hmm.
physical thing.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of the things too with Reiki is that it can be very complementary to the health system that we have. So there's a lot of stuff where it's kind of like doctors just prescribe things for the symptoms that we have, but it's not actually they're not actually looking at, what's the root cause of this. And this is one of the things that I like more with some of the holistic things. Like if you go to a naturopath, they're going to ask you something like, what's actually going on in your life? Are there some stressors that are bothering you? And what does that look like? And, what other symptoms are happening in your body and what does that relate to?
Mm.
And it just like having that more well-rounded outlook on everything and how you can start to address that, I think is really, really important. And that's like, again, where Reiki comes in. So it's like, I'm really anxious and my stomach's really upset. And so do I need a whole bunch of like antacids or like I was going to say ADHD medication? That's probably not the best example, but something to reduce anxiety or something. If someone's very, very depressed, do I need something specifically for depression? Again, all of these things can be used in combination, like medications and also doing the work, I think is really important. So, why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? What are the core reasons for this? Is it because, I'm feeling really lonely in my life and that's because there's trauma that's happened and I'm being more avoidant in my life to protect myself and I don't trust people. So then I separate myself. And then again, I feel really lonely and depressed because I just don't have community. And how can I take action into that? And then if I'm feeling very anxious, usually it's kind of like I feel like anxiety is kind of like I'm fearful of different things. I'm scared to disappoint people. I need to people please so that people will accept me. I don't want to set boundaries because then people may not like me. And so a lot of that actually very much also goes towards loneliness and a lack of community. So it can show up in different ways, but we still need to start to see, these are the patterns that I have that aren't actually helping me and they're not healthy. And if I learn to, this solo stuff again that I do with my coaching, if I learn to be able to express my needs in a healthy way, to realize that I don't need to be scared of boundaries, and the boundaries are actually protecting me, and the people that are ready to accept those boundaries are the healthier ones for me. And people that don't like my boundaries, then maybe they need a little bit of time to get used to me setting them.
Or bye.
Or not, or if they don't at all, or then they're not the right people for me.
Hmm. Well, is there types of people that shouldn't take Reiki, or whether it comes down to medical conditions or being pregnant or not pregnant, or can anyone take this at any time?
No, energy is good any point in time.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
So
there's no issue with it.
now, have you ever done Reiki on a pregnant person? Like, has it changed or you've got different messages?
I have not. I've done Reiki on pregnant horses, but I have not.
On horses.
Yeah.
Please, I would love to hear this story.
Well, I used to work with horses before a couple of years ago. I was an assistant manager at a broodmare like racehorse farm basically.
Mhm.
And I was like helping doing the midwifery there. So I was around pregnant horses all the time and I love doing Reiki on a few of them. There are a couple that I would select and I'd always like to do them. But I never thought about the fact of like the two lives being in the same body. Animals are different than humans. Like the way that their energy shows up in the messages and things, it's different.
That's quite an experience, though. I think that's
Hmm.
very cool. And that's essentially what this is that we are moving around our life energy, our life force that's within us.
Hmm.
And I think that because we have lack of education on it, it
Hmm.
can be so overwhelming to some when you start doing it or start saying it, because some people are actually like, you know what, I do have that inner sense, or I do kind of feel this way, and
Hmm.
because we don't talk about it that much, you might feel like you're the only one. So it's really cool to like kind of open up this community for Reiki.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and I think if it's something that you're interested in too, it's definitely good to have like another friend or someone else within the community that you can actually, talk to about it. Like people can reach out to me and ask whatever questions they have. But when I was moving through all the stuff that I was all my training, I had I had like my best friend at the time, her and I were doing the levels basically together. She had her first two levels and then I caught up to her and then we did our masters together. And then so we just do Reiki on each other a lot. And then we'd like get all our messages and then confirm what was happening and like give feedback. And it was really fun. Like it was a lot of fun. It was very supportive. And that was, I think, a huge part in helping like bolster the fact that I could trust my intuition and the messages that were coming through alongside it with I did a whole bunch of like called in volunteer, like, anyone that wants to do Reiki, I want to practice. Let's do some Reiki. And I did a whole bunch of like free sessions at the very beginning too, just to kind of see, you know, I don't even know if I wanted to trust my intuition more per se, but that's what I definitely got out of it was like, oh, okay, this is right.
So even if somebody wanted to learn this and not necessarily be a practitioner, this would really just help somebody with their own intuition with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the thing about it. I think that we should actually be encouraging because I do believe that we have kind of lost our own self trust a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Maybe it's just my opinion, but kind of how the society is, we have to trust others all the time. And we forget that we do have our own trust system within ourselves and we can make decisions and trust ourselves as well. And this would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now, what are like the most common questions that you receive when it comes to Reiki?
I feel like the biggest questions I get are usually like, can you actually do this long distance or over a Zoom call? And again, I've kind of said this earlier. Yes is the answer. It's very easy. I've done quite a few recordings too. I don't know if I have a whole bunch on my YouTube channel, but I've done some like client calls and recordings of sessions that I've got up there for people to listen to. But I feel like the example that I give is, we have our cell phones that work very well with this invisible force
Hmm.
of, being able to receive all this information from these phone towers. We can't see that it's working, but we know it's working. Same thing with the internet and all, like, all the things. So why can we believe that this device over here can receive these things, but we can't?
Mm, absolutely. And I feel like people know it. Like, it's
Mhm.
like when you walk into a room, the energy changes if somebody, like, you can sense it off other people. Like, we've
Mhm.
all been in that situation. So that's
Yeah.
something to know that you can just build off of it and just keep making it stronger and stronger, it sounds like.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it really is one of the most important things. And this is like on a, everyday tangible and in person level. When people are dating too, I think that there's a lot to say with trusting your intuition. And like people know, I could say this for myself, like there are certain things that I've known, something was off or I needed to ask something and I would ignore it and then later be like, oh, okay, I did, like, there was something and I did feel it and I ignored it and I shouldn't have. Like I should have just, pushed a little more or asked a question or something. And that's one of the things that I keep getting hit with actually lately is it's just, like intuition is spot on. Listen to it. People might try to not like purposely deceive you, but even in a thing of when you're trusting yourself and be like, are you okay? And then they're like, yeah, I'm fine. You're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You like tell me what's going on. And those things, because like things like that are really important too. And asking people, about their emotions and if something actually really is, and be like, I do want to hear because I want you to also recognize this is a safe place to be able to share things and to build that intimacy within our relationship, that emotional intimacy.
And some people, I think we've kind of, some people just don't want to complain. They'll say, like, everything's good. I'm happy. And yeah, just saying, like, but are you really? Because there's
Hmm.
a lot of stress out there. And so I think that it's very numbing. So I'm not sure, but it kind of sounds like you could end up with a lot of clients at the beginning that are very numb or disconnected. And this is about helping them reconnect back into their body and their soul and just in general.
Yeah, I feel like I think I actually get people that are more sensitive. So maybe like hypervigilant versus
Mm.
um well, I guess you can kind of be both though, because you can be really hypervigilant to the world around you, which I really feel like the hypervigilance and being empathic kind of go hand in hand. Because I think as you learn it as you're a kid to be more hypervigilant about all the things that might be going on, if you can't really rely on whatever your natural environment is, like when's someone coming home or what upsets this person, and it's never like a consistent thing, then yeah, people will start to get really attuned to others to be like, okay, I want to see how I can keep myself safe and how I can gauge that. And so that's a little bit where I'm kind of like hypersensitivity and being empathic, I really just feel like they just really go together.
Well, Reiki is something that I believe that if people could experience it, it would change their mind. But it's something like it's like going to tarot card readers. Like, but I
Mhm.
love it. So it's like one of those things, like I feel like there's a stigma around it, like like oh, tarot cards are not really going to tell you the truth. But in reality, like I have been to certain places and they have just called out just stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
do you have me on social media or something? Like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And so again, it's seeing is believing and really taking that chance and going forward.
Yeah. I don't like tarot cards, to be honest.
Really?
Mostly because there's I've got plenty of cards here. I've got like Oracle and tarot cards. But whenever I pulled the tarot cards, I'm like, oh, you guys, you really are honest. I
It's
don't
like
like it.
I've definitely been in a situation where I have asked the cards the same question repetitively over and over again, and each time they give me the same answer, and I'm like, no, no, how is this? I've shuffled you 3 times, and you still do this to me. So
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, this was great to have you on the show. And do you have any last thoughts for Reiki that you want to share and just where my listeners can find you?
Well, I would say that Reiki is quite magical and you should try it.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's fun. Like Reiki for me, when I first really started doing it, it really opened up that, yeah, like this magical world, but in that sense of really being able to trust in self and allow like these really interesting coincidences to just to start happening. Where I'm like, I don't know, like this I don't know how, like, I don't know. I use like crystals and stuff, or I did more so before, but the crystals are again like using the cards and the same card popping up every day for a
Mm,
while until you get the message that you need, something needs to happen here, or or picking a crystal that you just like can't take your eye off of, and then looking at the properties of it, and then like realizing, oh, yeah, this is exactly related to what I need or what's going on in my life right now. I'm like, okay, my intuition is very good at picking these things. And I just think that that's really like the magic of it is when we can get in tune with that. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the magic that comes behind that. But anyway, so there's that. And then I'm planning on actually doing a Reiki training this summer. I'm working on getting a space right now. I don't know when it's going to be. I need to confirm some dates and times, but I'm hoping that it's going to be in June. And then I'll probably host some more later too. So if anyone's interested in learning about the Reiki or like learning to do Reiki level 1 and that self-healing portion with me, then you can reach out. Got a booklet that I can send you of all the information. And my only requirement is that you have to do a Reiki session with me first, because you have to know that you actually like me
yeah.
and how I do my healing.
Well, that's actually a really good point. And I like that aspect to it. And I do like that the levels include self-healing. I think that
Mhm.
that's a very, I don't know, like in comparison to something that I did the 200-hour yoga certificate. And even
Mhm.
though I have that, I would never go around and be like, I am a yoga instructor.
Mhm.
So I feel like even the first level of that could have been something like self-healing just to learn that. But that's my own personal experience on that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think some people still will go and like work on others with their level 1, but the thing is, I just think that you're bypassing a really big portion with that, and you're like
mm,
missing the whole point of that self-healing part. Which is where I call out people for being codependent healers. Like, I just want to help others. I just want to fix people. I'm like, that's not your job. That is not your job to fix people.
Well, yeah, that's a
Um,
saying of like if you're helping someone who didn't ask for help, that's a form of manipulation. Like I do
yeah,
believe in that sentence there. So people need to think about it because yeah, it might seem like good intention, but it's from yourself, not necessarily
yeah,
for the greater of the good for everybody
yeah,
involved.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it's just a lot of the time. I don't think people love hearing this, but I think a lot of the time too is some of that. It's like these people need it, or they like, they need to do this. This will help fix them. This will do whatever. Like you're trying to take control of a situation that you can't take control of. But realistically, like what it feels like, or what I kind of like see when people are like they need this, and especially if it's someone that's close to them, it's kind of like I need them to do this so that it feels better for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's actually still coming from a selfish place, but they just are going to be like, no, it's not, but
And
it is.
also sometimes it's like dictating,
Yeah.
like as if I know better than that person, but
Yeah.
everybody's
Well,
healing
yeah.
journey is different.
Well, yeah, and it's like that. So it's like enabling for behavior. Like you need to do this, but if you're the one dictating it and they're not making that choice, then you're basically taking away their free will. Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, this was a great conversation, Shelby, and I would love to have you back on the show anytime. But for my listeners, I will be back on Wednesday, and you guys all know what to do. Stay kinky.
Bye, guys.